Hey everyone, this is Britton here. Thank you guys for coming to the group. A lot of you guys are totally new. You guys maybe have not even read our book yet, but you guys are interested in how to motivate your kids for greatness, which is what we're talking about tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Britton the Tulip. I am the president of Blue Manors Online Academy. I'm also the author of the Art of Raising Children for Greatness series. It's going to be 5 books by the time we get it done. Right now there are 2. The first one is Revealing School. And then the one that everybody's real familiar with that's been really popular right now is Education. There's a chapter in Education on motivation. But today what we're going to be talking about is a little bit different. It's not actually in the book. I wanted to give you guys something that's new, that's kind of fresh for those of you who've read the book, just to keep you going. Tonight we're going to be talking about motivation because I see so many moms out there, and a lot of times they comment to me, and that's probably the number one thing is they talk about how every day is a grind with their kids. Their kids are just not interested in education. It's not like they're not smart. It's not like the parents aren't on board or don't know how to teach, but they just can't get their kids excited about education. And when we talk about raising children for greatness, there is no way to drag your kids to greatness. They have to be motivated. They have to want it as much or more than you want it for them. Until then, homeschooling is going to be hard. It's definitely a hassle. It's not fun. And a lot of homeschooling parents give up, not because they're not good teachers or they can't find the right curriculum. They give up because they just can't get their kids fired up, and they put it back in the public school system. And the funny thing is in the public school system, those kids aren't any more motivated. It's just like it's the teacher's problem now, and she's paid to deal with that problem. And it really is painful when you have an unmotivated kid. Now, that's really never been an issue for me and my kids. I have 7 kids, 1 still in the womb, and then the others were pretty much actively homeschooling. We've never had that issue. I've always felt like homeschooling was pretty easy. And a few years ago, when I saw all these moms kind of complaining, or a lot of them just giving up, putting their kids back in school, I decided I would address this. And I wrote this article just to get moms pumped up, like, hey, it doesn't have to be that hard. And the article was titled Homeschooling. It's a piece of cake. And it didn't go over very well, actually. Moms got super upset, like I was discrediting the hard work and the struggle that they were putting in, and they just found it offensive. I'm not even sure if they read the whole thing. They lit me up in the comment section, and how dare I say it was, homeschooling was easy. And it actually got so bad that we had to remove the article from our business page. And if you've read Revealing School, even some of the things in education, I'm not worried about saying controversial things, but this got so bad. Like I just ticked these women off so bad. I had to remove the article. My wife actually took the same kind of concepts and rewrote it and republished it on her blog, and then we never promoted it, and we just kind of let it go after that because it's so controversial. Well, tonight I'm actually going to say the same thing. I'm just going to try to say it a little less offensively. I do think homeschooling can be a piece of cake if you master the art of motivation. If you have motivated kids who get up and they're excited about learning and they want this as much as you want it, then homeschooling is too easy. And that's what we have in our home. And I don't think my kids are any more special than your kids or any more gifted than your kids. I think it's just we have a little bit of a different approach. For us, we see motivation as the primary. Like it's more important than the curriculum, the techniques. It's more important than your schedule. You have to motivate your kids if you want them to achieve great things. There's a whole bunch of principles that we have in the book. Today, I'm just going to be talking about one of them. I've alluded to it last week. It is the principle of the primary motivator. A while back, I was talking to a mom. She's like, man, I'm just really struggling with this homeschool thing. I have a kid. He will not do his math. I've tried everything. We have a system now where if he does an hour of math, he gets an hour of video games. And I thought that would work and it would encourage him. But actually, it's had a really bad effect. He's actually just rushing through his lesson. He gets all of the answers wrong. And then when I correct him and tell him to go back and redo his work, he just throws a huge fit. So it's actually still just a hassle. I can't motivate him, and I'm really thinking about putting him back into the public school system. Well, this woman is suffering from what I call a secondary motivator. Math is not the primary motivator for her kid. The primary motivator is the video games. So this kid is super excited the whole time he's doing his math. He's excited for the video games. That's what he's thinking about. He's rushing through his math as quick as he can. And then he's getting all the answers wrong. And then when she tells him to correct it, he's really frustrated because he thought he'd already be playing video games. by that time. So she's really just shot herself in the foot. She's actually turned math into the pill her son has to swallow to get to what he really wants, which is the video games. So if we want to motivate our kids for greatness, we have to make math or just education in general, all the subjects, we have to make them the primary motivators. We have to make them as motivated to do their math as they are to play video games. And believe it or not, that is a reality in our home. And I'm going to tell you how you can make that a reality for you guys tonight. It's actually not as hard as you would think. So, all right. So I'm actually going to have notes today. I'm going to ramble a little less and actually try to make this class a little bit more professional. There are 2 ways to turn your kids' education into a primary motivator. They're both very scientific. Okay, the first one is through alchemy. And the second one I call relativity. So alchemy and relativity. Hopefully you guys know what alchemy is. It was the ancient practice of it was really just chemistry, trying to turn other elements into gold. But it's really just about transforming one thing into another. So the first way, and the reason that my kids, for example, actually do love math as much as they love video games is because we have transformed math into a video game. It's called Prodigy. And I'm sure, hopefully you guys have seen this, especially if you have elementary kids. We actually have a math curriculum on Blue Manor Academy. That's our core curriculum. But I'd say in the last few months, like 90% of our kids' math has been in this game, Prodigy. And it's a video game. My kids love it so much, it's become an obsession. We have my 6-year-old Jonathan. It was really weird. Some mornings, me and my wife, you just wake up and you have that feeling like something's not right or there's somebody in the room. And we'd listen, it got quiet. Then we kind of go back to sleep. And then eventually, like one day I rolled over and I saw my little kid, Jonathan, his eyes like looking up at me. And he was in there sneaking into our room to get the tablets at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning so he could play Prodigy, which is just math. That's all it is. It's just a math video game. And before his siblings got up, he wanted to get a few hours in. So that's how motivated and passionate he was. We actually had to set limits and say, okay, dude, go outside and play, no more math. That's how motivated he was. So that was through alchemy. We actually just turned math into a video game. That's probably the easiest or cheapest way to do it. But there are other forms of alchemy. And then the other thing is it does kind of seem like cheating, I think, to a lot of homeschooling parents. Many are kind of adverse to technology. And it really does seem like cheating. If you went through the public school system and you're used to doing math in a textbook with worksheets, it's supposed to be dull and painful. It does seem like cheating when your kid is playing video games. But it's actually working. If anybody who knows my oldest boy, Colton, is 6, 7 years old. He was doing long division in his head and stuff. I mean, he's just a genius. He's doing square roots in his head, solving math problems that I had trouble solving. So it absolutely was working, and he loved it. So video games is a form of alchemy. You may not like that one, but it really works, and the kids love it. The second form of alchemy is competition. My daughter, Audrey, she's my oldest daughter. She's actually very good at geography. We started her very young. She could name most of the capitals and states and countries. And she's always been pretty knowledgeable when it comes to geography. But we were kind of getting to that point where she's like, what's the point? And she just wasn't really enthusiastic about geography anymore. And that's okay. It can be boring. But we wanted to get her fired up again. So we enrolled her in a geography B. And then it was really great the first year she signed up. And, she studied right away. She studied a little bit more because of the competition. But then she went out there and it didn't really go that well. She lost. She kind of got her tail kicked. And that was great because the next year she was super fired up. Like she was humiliated. She was embarrassed, which is a powerful form of motivation, public humiliation. So she immediately, like the next year, she studied and she studied and she studied. She was super motivated. And we actually put her into a group. There was a homeschool group, and there was these 2 other brothers in this group. They're actually, I think, we have 2 daughters. My oldest 2 are daughters. So one of the brothers is a year older than my sister, and one of the second brother is a year older than my other daughter. And they were doing this geography B competition, and the 2 brothers beat the sisters. And the older brother smiled at my oldest daughter, Audrey, and said, "The brothers beat the sisters." And she was really fired up. All kids have that sense of competition in them. They love to be the best. They love to compete. So we just motivated her by turning her geography, which was kind of boring from the textbook, into a competition. And my two daughters got so pumped up that they actually bought some of their own curriculum online. We let them download some apps. So I don't even know what their curriculum is anymore. They got like 10 things that they're doing, and they know so much geography. They know way more than me. And I've written geography curriculums for Blue Manor Academy. So it works. Competition is powerful. Let me look at my notes. So, another form of alchemy, just real quick, I wanted to cover is friends and socializing. So my kids, they don't have access to their friends a ton. So we put them in this geography club, and they got to see their other friends. And so it was exciting. They looked forward to that just to see some of their friends. So that is a form of educational alchemy. If you can take education and kind of turn it into a social event, in addition to competition, it's just a bonus tip. All right. And the cool thing about competition is you can pretty much turn anything into a competition. If you want your kids to know more about agriculture, farming, animals, whatever, you have 4-H. The Bible, you have Bible bowls. Spelling, you have spelling bees. Math, you have math bowls. There's chess tournaments. There's science fairs. You can really turn anything into a competition. Now, you may not have time to do everything as a competition, but what I usually do is I save this educational alchemy for subjects my kids are maybe not as motivated to do. Like, I really don't usually have to pump my kids up to read. They love reading. They love art. They actually like math for the most part. Spelling, my boy hated spelling, so we got him an app, a fun app for spelling, because my daughter was struggling with geography, so we did the geography bee. So you don't want to overuse these things, but you want to use them wisely when you need them. Competition is a powerful motivator. And even if your kid never wins anything, they'll still be better than 99% of people. The worst kid on our chess team can probably beat most adults in chess. So competition is powerful educational alchemy. The next one, this is probably my favorite. This has been the most effective. This is why I can honestly say education in our home, homeschooling, has been a piece of cake. And this is definitely cheating. But the next form of alchemy is leadership. Kids love to be in charge. I think we all do, and it helps them take ownership. I learned this lesson a few years ago. I live out in the country, and behind our house there's a big hill, and at the top of the hill, it's actually kind of like a mountain. At the top of the hill there's a cross, and I was taking my daughter, who was like 5 or 6, and then her cousin, who's a little bit older, on what I call a never give up hike. It's like a character development thing. You go hiking and you don't quit till you get to the top. But I was trying to push them along, and I was ahead of them and pushing them along, and they were just whining and complaining, and they were so tired. And finally I got sick of it, and I just went to the behind them, and I let them lead. Said, fine, just take off. You don't have to follow me anymore. If you step on a snake, it's your problem. And then I complained, and I was like, oh, wait up. This is so hard. Wait, my feet hurt. And they just laughed their way to the top. There's something empowering about being in charge, about being at the head of the pack. And it's exciting for kids. And you can do that with their education. You should empower your kids, give them some autonomy over their own education. It's powerful educational alchemy. So this is why it's easy for me to homeschool and my wife. We have 3 oldest kids, and really this only works, I think, past the age of reason, so 7 years and up. So we have 3 of them, Audrey, Emma, and Colton. We have empowered them not only to take over a lot of their own education, but to take over the education and the running of our house. It's kind of like it's like leadership training for them. So Colton, who's the youngest, he is 7 years old. He started doing this. He's 8 now. On Monday, he was in charge of the house. I go out here. I write books for you guys. I illustrate children's books. I build the academy. I'm working on the business. My wife has her stuff she's doing too. And there's really no reason for us to be babysitting a 7 or 8 year old at that point. They can start taking charge of their life and other people. It's teaching them leadership. So he wakes up. He runs the house. He inspects the other kids' rooms, make sure they make their beds. He helps get breakfast ready. And you think, man, what a burden for an 8-year-old. But actually, they love that day. That's the day they get up the earliest. That's the only day that they really make their room really good, and they follow all the rules, because being in charge, leadership is powerful. And so he gets up, he runs the house, he makes sure the chores are done. He assigns schoolwork. The older daughters, they kind of do their own thing anyway. But he actually sits down and teaches his younger brothers their school stuff. So he'll read to him. He'll teach them some geography and some math. It's exciting for him to take charge. The other kids like it. He's reinforcing everything he's learned by teaching them. And then there's really not a whole lot of burden for me and my wife. We just kind of monitor. We step in when we have to. But on Monday, Colton is in charge. And and then on Tuesday and Wednesday, Emma's in charge. She's amazing. She loves this. She wakes up early. I mean, she gets everything done. She teaches school better than me and my wife. She's an amazing teacher. We're going to get her on Blue Manor Academy someday. And she loves it. It's her passion. And then, of course, my daughter Audrey, she's kind of like the drill instructor. Our house is the cleanest when she's in charge, and everybody follows the rules and is in line. She takes Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so this has been a big deal for us. It's really taken the burden of education or homeschooling off of us, and it's really made it easy. And at the same time, it's inspired them because they're in charge. It's exciting for them. So leadership is a form of educational alchemy. Now, we've kind of grown up because we live in this democracy and we love these democratic principles. We've grown up with this common phrase. I talk about it. I don't remember if it's in this book. It's probably in the next book. But you've probably all heard the quote, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay, and we just grain that in our kids. So a lot of times we don't give our kids very much authority over their siblings. We imagine that they'll abuse it, they'll become tyrants. That is not necessarily true. And I learned this at military boarding school. I went to a prep school in Virginia, all male military boarding school, my sophomore and junior year of high school. And I was a sergeant, and it was a trick. Whenever you had somebody in your squad, we inspected the rooms, made sure they did their chores and extra duties, and inspected their uniforms and just everything, right? So whenever you had somebody that wasn't really following the rules, wasn't necessarily a bad kid, just wasn't on top of everything, maybe failed their room inspections and stuff sometimes, we would actually make them our rule enforcer. We'd make them our corporal. It was a great trick. You would take a kid who always showed up with scuffed up shoes and a messed up uniform in a dirty room. You'd make him your corporal, and then all of a sudden, I had this one guy we put in. He was horrible, and then we put him in charge, and he had the cleanest room. His shoes were so shined. He like won a company competition, and then he became a Nazi for the other kids. Like, I didn't have to inspect rooms anymore. He'd go in there and just tear their stuff up, and he just raised the bar because we empowered him. So I do think that, power can corrupt, but a lot of times it purifies us. When I put my daughter in charge, that's the day she does the least amount of bullying and there's the least amount of bickering between her because she's the leader. She wants to set the example. It's the same with my other two kids. When they're empowered and they're in charge, they take responsibility and they're super motivated. They love to be in charge. Now, you may not have a lot of kids, or you may not have kids that are old enough to take charge of homeschooling and the chores and whatever, but you can give them some autonomy over their own education. If you have a very young kid, it could just be picking out like 3 or 4 books you want them to read and then letting them pick one of them. Letting them download some apps that they want or some games, or letting them write out their own goals and schedule. And you can kind of guide it and tailor it, but give them a longer leash and watch how they take charge of their own lives and they're inspired and motivated. It's really powerful. So that's another form of educational alchemy. There's tons of others. You guys can probably list some comments if you have some ideas maybe about other forms of alchemy. I'd love to hear them. The next thing I want to talk about is relativity. Obviously, even if you have competition at your disposal and leadership and you have some cool video games and stuff, that doesn't always work. Sometimes your kids are still going to drag their feet. They're still not going to want to do their spelling. We have that issue in my house, even no matter what we do. Like my boy Colton, he's a genius at math. I mean, absolutely a genius at math. He's not super fond of spelling. So I learned a second technique. I actually learned this one in the military. When I was 20 years old, there's a special school in the military. It's called SEER. It's a Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape school. And it's basically for soldiers who might be shot down, in their airplane or captured behind enemy lines, and they have to survive out in the wild, or they might get captured and they have resistance, anti-torture training or whatever. It's actually pretty intense. I went through a level C school. It's 2 weeks long, and it really is intense. And during the survival portion of the training, they took us out, and this is in Washington. And the reason I got to go, by the way, is because nobody else wanted to go. This was in January, and all the older, wiser NCOs and stuff were like, yeah, pass. And I was 20, so I was like, yeah, I'll go. That's awesome. So I end up in Washington State. There's like 4 feet of snow on the ground. We're up somewhere in the mountains. As soon as we get off, we get these heavy rucksacks. We have these boots that are like this thick of rubber to keep your feet warm. They're super hard to walk in. And we just start hiking up this hill. And that night, we're setting up our camp. You can't tie the lashings and stuff. So you have to take off your gloves, and you're freezing cold, and you have no food for the week. And that's the other part. So you're like, you're freezing at night. You're shivering in this bed of snow. You have no food, and then during the day, you're doing long movements, and you're working all day. You're exhausted. It was pretty incredible. And technically, we were allowed to like trap food, but again, it was in January, so it was more effort to set up the snares, and we never got anything, nothing. We could barely get water for ourselves because we had to melt the huge piles of snow, and then you get this like disgusting smoke water. And anyway, and you melt a huge pile of snow, and you get like this tiny little cup of water. But my point is by the end of the week, we were exhausted, we were dehydrated, we were super hungry. And they brought us into this little village. We linked up with these villagers, and they gave us our first meal for the week. And it was incredible. It was, to this day, the best thing I've ever had. And I've been to some fancy restaurants, but this is the best thing I've ever had, okay? They had this huge pot of boiling water, and they dropped some bouillon cubes into it. That's it, just bouillon cubes. And it was so delicious. And I don't mean like because we were out there by comparison it was good. I mean literally it tasted delicious. We were lining up for seconds. And it was literally the best thing I've ever tasted. Since that time, I've tried to duplicate that meal, but I can only starve myself fast for a few days. I'm too weak. So I've never been able to enjoy that meal again. But the point is much of life is based on relativity. The reason I loved that meal so much was because it was infinitely more tasty than the nothing I'd eaten all week. So it was literally good. It's actually a really cool concept. I don't want to get into it too much, but it's kind of philosophical, and that God really gives everybody an equal opportunity to be happy, because there's people out there that are starving, but then when they do get a little meal and it's not even fancy or anything, it's just delicious. And then you have these other people, they live in Hollywood, they live in these mansions, they have these good feasts every day. And they're totally depressed because everything is so good that nothing is really good by comparison. So relativity is important. And I'm going to tie this back into education. So how do you get your kids to love their education? Well, when it came to video games, the reason my kids love that Prodigy game, that math game, is because by comparison, it's amazing. They don't really have access to other games. They do have like a Wii, but we only pull it out at holidays. So literally, this is one of their only access, one of the only times that they get to access video games is to do math. I think if we had other video games like, I don't know, Call of Duty for older kids or something, or the Wii out all the time, they wouldn't have enjoyed Prodigy. They wouldn't have enjoyed their math video game. So much of what we do, our kids are so spoiled a lot of times that education is almost impossible. There are too many exciting things in the home that distract our kids. So a few years ago, my daughter used to read all the time. Avid reader, my oldest daughter. She'd read every book. She loved reading. And then all of a sudden, it just stopped. And after a while, I was like, Audrey, what's going on? Like, you don't read any books anymore. She's like, oh, it's boring. I'm like, reading books is boring? What are you talking about? So I went out and I got her the Narnia series, which is amazing. I read that when I was a kid. It's the best books for kids, the Narnia. Okay? I give her the books. She reads the first, few chapters, and then I just don't see her reading it anymore. I'm like, Audrey, what are you doing? You're not going to read the Narnia anymore? It's boring. Like, if a kid finds Narnia boring, then there's something wrong. Like, something went wrong. And I realized over the years, we had spoiled our daughters. Their rooms were piled with toys. They had all these video games and movies, and they're just like too much exciting things. And we had spoiled Audrey. Spoiled her so much that she couldn't even enjoy an amazing book like Narnia anymore. And so this was really simple fix. And it seems extreme, but it was a great and simple fix. It really worked. We just got rid of everything. It made our rooms cleaner. It simplified our lives, but we got rid of all toys. We came up with a rule, and this is going to seem crazy and out there. That's okay. Kids are so spoiled today. Everything seems crazy, like any restriction. But we made a rule that after 7 years old, you don't have any toys. There's no reason for it. You're past the age of reason. I understand little kids wanting toys, but 7, no toys on. It's been the best thing. We made another rule, movies. How can you compete with movies? Movies are so exciting. They do all the thinking, all the creativity for you. Kids are just, they just watch a movie and they're just like zombies. And it is exciting. How can a Narnia book, which takes some effort and some reading and maybe some looking up words and stuff like that, how can that compete with the movie? For most kids, it can't. The movie's the easy way out. So we just got rid of all TV, all movies, except for some educational stuff, except for 1 day a week. And this was so funny, too, because we used to use movies as a reward system. And after a while, our kids are like, whatever, they don't care. Well, now that they watch 1 movie a week, if on Saturday they perfectly clean the house, they love movies again. It's like, it's their ecstasy. It's a joy every week. They can't wait for their 1 movie. That's been huge motivation. So we removed that. Removed the toys, removed almost all of the video games, except for educational stuff like Prodigy. And now guess what? My daughter loves reading again. She loves to read. It's one of her favorite things to do. So by comparison, I think that most of us are struggling with education because our kids are too spoiled. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. You just have to really think about it. Our kids today have more entertainment in their pocket, in a cell phone, in a pocket. They can listen to the best music, any videos they want, any games, apps, everything they can in their pocket. Kings back in the day, rich kings who owned all the land, could not produce the entertainment and the distractions that these kids carry around in their pockets. So no wonder they don't want to do school. And it's actually pretty sad. And if you have Call of Duty just sitting there waiting for your boy, he's never going to love his math. He's always going to try to rush through and get to Call of Duty. Call of Duty's like crack. It just needs to be removed. And I say this as a grown-up. I didn't grow up with video games, but when I turned 20 years old, I got this Age of Empire game. I always wanted to play it. And you can ask my wife. It got so bad, I had to get rid of it. Because it is like crack. I was staying up all night playing this video game. And it takes it's hours and hours to play this strategy game. And I'd go to work and I'd be exhausted. And then I was barely alive. And then by the end of the day, I'd be like, I'd start to wake up and be like, oh, I'm going to play that game. I'd stay up all night again. And finally, I'm like, as a responsible adult, I have to remove this, okay? And I'm an adult. I've been through the military. I should have some self-control. And that video game is like crack. So we need to start limiting our kids. I highly recommend, you don't have to get rid of all the video games. Put it in a closet. That should be for holidays and weekends. The other thing is friends. Our kids have so much access to their friends. It used to be we lived on a farm and we got together for holidays or for church and we saw them every once in a while. Today, kids can just message their friends or FaceTime their friends every second of the day. Friends are always going to trump education. We have to limit that. I really do think it's important. Use that friend time strategically. You can tie it into education like we said earlier, but I had to limit it. So my kids, they can't FaceTime their friends all the time, except for on Saturday. If they do a good job, they get their chores done. So we have to remove those distractions. And when you remove those distractions, your kids are not going to have a miserable life. You don't have to be sorry for them. They'll just start to enjoy different things. They'll start to enjoy their math. They'll start to enjoy their social studies or whatever they're doing. Education should be interesting and exciting for kids. It can't be when you have all that crazy stuff going on around you. It'd be like studying in a theme park or something. How could it? So much distraction. How could you even do it? So our kids are not deprived. They just love reading again, and I actually think that's great. I feel like kids who can't enjoy reading are deprived. They have been literally spoiled. So anyway, relativity. Okay. Let's go back to my notes since I'm rambling. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, now after you remove the exciting distractions, it doesn't mean your kid's always going to want to spell. My son Colton, he's like I said, his spelling is his nemesis. He just doesn't care. I've never really pushed it. I don't really care that much about it. That's another story. We have spell check. We have so many things now. Memorizing spelling words, that's debatable. But we still do it. So one morning I was, by comparison, I'm like, I'm going to make this kid love his spelling today. So I'm like, Colton, if you can do your spelling, or you can go outside and do some dog poop. And I'm thinking, by comparison, relativity, he's going to want his spelling. And he's like, Dad, I'll do the dog poop. So it didn't work. I lost that one. Or maybe I didn't, because he picked up dog poop. So maybe I won. But the point is like, by comparison, he still didn't like his spelling. So this is the ultimate trick. This one always wins. It's called double load motivation. So what I did is the next day I said, okay, Colton, so you can do your 1 spelling worksheet today, or you can do 2 spelling worksheets today. So guess what? He was super excited and pumped to do the 1 spelling worksheet. That's called double load motivation. You can make anything. You can take math, and they hate math. Okay, cool, man. I'm gonna make you excited about this worksheet. If you're excited and do this 1 worksheet, you only have to do 1 instead of 2. Double load motivation. It actually works. And once the kids get in the habit of spelling and doing their worksheets, it's no big deal. They'll get used to it. Colton's been spelling a lot better lately, I think. Ask Janine. Or the kids, because they kind of run things. So, let's see. The point is, everything is relative. It's a matter of perspective. It's all about comparison. In time, kids can learn to love all things by comparison. So those are my 2 tips. Those are some ideas you have just to kind of supercharge the motivation in your home. Obviously, this is not enough. This is just to kind of get your appetite whet. There's a lot more in the book, and we're going to be talking about a lot more things here. But I just want to review really quick. Make education a primary motivator. The first way to do that is through alchemy, by turning education into something that's already super motivating to kids, like competition or leadership or video games, God forbid. I mean, but it works. And then, of course, the second way is through relativity. Remove all the crazy distractions. We can't just offer kids those distractions as a reward because that motivates them to get to the distraction. We really want the primary motivator to be the math, not the video game. So we have to remove those distractions, set boundaries. You should not be rewarding your kids with video games for doing the daily minimum assignment. Like, video games should be a super reward for extremely high effort. When you see a kid, he does like 10 math sheets and he's doing super well, and you say, wow, you have a great attitude today. You know what? Play some video games. That's what a reward should be. It should not be daily. Otherwise, it kind of loses its effect by relativity. And then, of course, you can go the negative route. And if the kid doesn't want to do it, you can compare their schoolwork to chores. Say, okay, well, you can do this or you can do the chores. And you win-win, because if they do the chores, they did the chores. Chores are great. And a lot of times, they'll just be more excited to do their schoolwork. I'm going to give you one last tip. I think that so many times we focus on what the public schools are doing that we just overburden our kids. It's like, you can take education. Education should be fun and exciting to kids. If you gorge them, if you overfeed them, it's going to be hell. I went back to a real estate class a long time ago as an adult, and I sat there and I was like, man, school is hell. I was only there for 2 weeks. I'm like, thank God I'm not doing this anymore. 8 hours a day, horrible. Kids shouldn't have to study 8 hours a day of school. Forget about what the schools are doing. We basically do, when our kids are young and we're focused on them, maybe an hour of intentional learning, like curriculum-based learning. And then after that, my kids learn all day long, but they take charge. They go after their passions. My daughter wants to be an artist. She spends hours, watching art videos and doing, stuff like that. My other boy, he wants to be an architect. So he studies architecture. He's like 8 years old. He's drawing pictures of buildings, and he goes out and he works and stuff. And so after you get the meat and potatoes done, you have to limit it. It can't be all day long. It can't be grueling, short and sweet. When we start kids off in preschool, we have a whole set of 5-minute lessons. Maybe do 1 or 2 of those a day. It's short and sweet, and our kids learn so much more because at a certain point, they check out. And then if education becomes grueling, kids will, they'll hate it. They'll learn to hate learning, and then they'll just disengage. So you'll be talking, and they won't be thinking. And if they're not engaged, they can't learn anyway. So short, sweet, intense, and then you move on. Gosh, I have a billion more. I feel like I haven't given you enough, but I think for today, that'll give you something to think about. Make education the primary motivator. If you guys have any other questions, actually, it's almost... Let's think differently. Okay, so I see some questions on here. Anyway, I'll try to get to those afterward. If you guys have any more questions, I'll try to address those. I'm going to be back on Friday. I am still sick. It's probably Corona. It's been lasting for like 2 weeks, but I'm not coughing right now, so I feel better. I'll be back on Friday, and I can address more of your concerns, your questions. And then if you guys haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. It really is a good book. If you guys have read it, you know how good it is, then I highly recommend you go for this one. It's a little thicker. Most of you, if you're homeschooling, think, why do I need to know what's wrong with public school? Because you're doing most of it in your school, in your homeschool. You're duplicating it, and you need to know why it's so bad. And then I just want to update you on character. Character is the meat and potatoes. It is the heart of an elite education. Characters Coming Soon. I was up late all night. Actually, I went to bed at like 6 in the morning, all night working on that book. It's close. It's written. We're editing it. We're just adding a little bit more here and there. I'm hoping to have it out in the next few months. And then the third book is written. It just needs to be edited. It'll be out later in the summer, or at least by fall. So it's coming. If you guys haven't reviewed the book, I really appreciate if you would. It does me a ton. And I don't know, some people are, if you hated the book, you don't have to review it. But if you liked it, it would really help me. I did get 1 or 2 bad reviews, 3 stars. One said my methods are extreme, and that's okay. When you go after greatness, it's always going to seem extreme. You don't win the gold in the Olympics using everyday normal methods, techniques, right? So what we are doing is a little extreme. It's out of the mainstream, but it's highly effective. It works. So, all right, guys, I'm rambling now, so I'm going to take off. Let me know your questions, and I'll get to you soon. Talk to you later. Bye.